If you're a counselor, you know that forgiveness is a big issue in the area of counseling. And in this video, I'm going to give you a 5-point Holy Spirit inspired perspective on how to deal with forgiveness in the counseling room. Stay tuned. Hi, my name is Aaliyah Mullins, and welcome to Holy Spirit Inspired Counseling, where I teach counselors how to use their education, training, and experience in the service of the kingdom. You don't have to have lived long before someone hurt you or offended you, so forgiveness is an issue that we all can relate to. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 points, a Holy Spirit inspired perspective on how to deal with forgiveness in counseling. And even though this video is directed towards counselors, you don't have to be a counselor to benefit from these points. Here we go. The number one Holy Spirit inspired point to think about when dealing with forgiveness is that forgiveness is supernatural. Something that's supernatural is something that goes outside and beyond scientific knowledge and natural law. And it goes against our natural inclination as human beings to forgive. Think about it. If we're not being diligent and mindful, the tendency is to hold on to offense. That's a sort of defense mechanism, because if we stay alert and angry and vigilant, we're less likely to put ourselves in a position where we can get hurt again. What guarantee do we have that if we forgive someone, they won't hurt us another time? Now, there is documented evidence about the benefits that come with forgiveness: better relationships, lower blood pressure, increased happiness. Nevertheless, forgiveness is not just psychological, it's also supernatural. We've all had to deal with minor offenses, somebody cutting us in line or getting into an argument with a coworker. And those things are small, they don't last long, and they don't have long-lasting effects. So we can forgive those in our own strength. But there are a wide range of traumas and injustices that people go through that it takes the help of the Holy Spirit for them to heal. Most counselors have had someone come into their office who had experienced so much trauma and such injustice that was egregious and ongoing that they were so scarred, the idea of them ever living without struggling seemed impossible. In those cases, it takes more than a psychological perspective. It takes the supernatural power of the Holy Spirit for those people to forgive and be healed. So as counselors, we want to have that perspective that forgiveness is supernatural and that it takes the help of the Holy Spirit for people to be made completely whole when they're working on the issue. My number 2 Holy Spirit inspired point about forgiveness is that the great forgiver is inside of every Christian. When people get saved, the Holy Spirit comes and resides on the inside of them, and He's the great forgiver. There's nothing He can't forgive. Deuteronomy 30:14 says, "But the word is near unto thee, in thy mind and in thy mouth and in thy heart, so that you can do it." What that means is that people don't have to look high and low and all around to figure out where they're going to get the strength and the power to be able to forgive. That power is already on the inside of them. It's right near to them so they can do it. The Holy Spirit working within. So where the world is full of sin and crime and injustice, there is no sin, no crime, and no injustice that the Holy Spirit cannot or will not forgive. In fact, the Holy Spirit will partner with believers who are working on forgiveness, and He will empower them to engage in a supernatural form of forgiveness that comes from a place of resting in Him. As counselors, we want to bring that perspective to the people we see so that they know they're not walking out this walk of forgiveness by themselves. The great helper is with them, and He is going to strengthen them through the process. And of course, non-Christians can engage in forgiveness too. Their forgiveness happens on a psychological level, on an emotional level. Whereas when the Holy Spirit is working, that forgiveness penetrates and that healing goes deep down into the soul. That's because He's working from the inside out. The number 3 Holy Spirit inspired point about forgiveness is that it takes faith to forgive. When someone's been deeply hurt by others, the idea of forgiving can seem offensive and inflammatory. And for some people who've been holding on to unforgiveness for so long, the idea of ever experiencing any relief seems impossible, if not far-fetched. That's why forgiveness is an act of faith, Because in the beginning, when people decide they want to forgive, it's not a feeling, it's really just a decision. And so it can be difficult for people to believe that they'll make it to the end of the process of forgiving and actually experience any relief. So we don't want to urge people or persuade people to forgive before they're ready, but we do want to encourage them and let them know that it takes faith to forgive. Faith to believe that after years and sometimes decades of holding on and having all of these unresolved feelings, that there can be relief. And remember, because forgiveness is supernatural, it doesn't work without faith. My number 4, Holy Spirit inspired point about forgiveness is that the Holy Spirit will direct people in how to walk out their forgiveness. So as counselors, it's very important that we use the proper interventions and techniques to help people deal with feelings of resentment and bitterness and anger. That's all important and very necessary. But the Holy Spirit will also give people specific directions on things they need to do to shed unforgiveness. And he'll say things that are really quite normal, like, stop saying that thing you always say about what happened to you. Read this book on forgiveness. Go outside and don't sit in the house. He'll give people really specific little instructions on how to walk out their forgiveness. And it's through their obedience to those little instructions that they open themselves up. They're opening their hearts up for him to come in and have access to those wounded and scarred places. John 16:13 says, "Howbeit when the Spirit of truth is come, he shall lead us and guide us into all truth." That means that the Holy Spirit wants to lead and direct people exactly where they need to go in order to receive what's available to them. We want to maintain the perspective that forgiveness is supernatural. Otherwise, people will try to take on forgiveness in their own strength, and they won't seek the help of the Lord or rely on the Holy Spirit to lead them and guide them through the process. As counselors, we want to use our clinical expertise and our spiritual knowledge to let the Holy Spirit shine the light on the path he wants to lead people down so that they can receive the fullness of their healing and walk in forgiveness. My number 5 Holy Spirit inspired point about forgiveness is that we as counselors need to be growing in forgiveness too. It's hard to lead people through a territory that you yourself have never been through. As counselors, we need to be growing in our ability to forgive. That's how we can help people effectively navigate the territory. And walking in forgiveness as a counselor is a much higher walk than unconditional positive regard, because we need to take that walk outside the counseling room and apply it to the people we see in our everyday lives. If you're a counselor and you struggle with forgiveness, then my advice is to seek support. Maybe you need to get one-on-one counseling or talk to a mentor or a family member. But I would encourage you to get the help you need so that you can also walk in the joy and the peace that you're encouraging and trying to lead other people into. That's it. Those are my 5 Holy Spirit inspired points on how to deal with forgiveness in the counseling room. I hope this video has blessed you, and if you haven't, hit the subscribe button and you'll be updated when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. God bless.